Hey, good afternoon, everybody. So today we've got Dr. Larry Noblick. He's down at the Montgomery Botanical Center, which is in South Florida, and he's a palm expert, and he's also deals with the conservation aspects of palms and seeking them out in places, figuring out like where they're located, and potentially bringing some of the plant material back here. So with that, I'll let him go into more detail on what he does and like some of the highlights of his work here. But I'll go ahead and pass it off here to Dr. Noblick.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate having the opportunity to share with you people. It's always great that people are actually interested in what I do. Okay, so my title today, or the title of my talk today, is From the Jungle to the Garden, and I'm just sharing some of the places I've been and some of the palms I've been able to bring back to the garden. Let's see if I can make this thing actually move. Okay, so can everyone see that? Okay, so Montgomery Botanical Center, okay, what are we? Okay, we're basically we're a botanical garden, okay, and our garden is about 122 acres in size, and our mission is advancing conservation, research, and education through living scientific plant collections in a garden of exemplary design. We're not just a garden, a stamp book collection of palms. We're actually interested in conserving them. For that reason, when we do a collection and we plant out at least 7 to 15 of every accession. And we are interested in actually planting out from different populations. So we have over maybe 6,500 different specimens, palm specimens on the property. And we're approaching probably over 5,000 cycad specimens. So those two are our main focus. This is Colonel Robert Montgomery. This is his original garden. He was a fairly wealthy man. This was his winter home. And he wasn't always rich. He was the son of a poor Methodist minister who was the son of a poor Methodist minister who was the son of a poor Methodist minister. And earlier on, he decided he didn't want to be poor. He wanted to be rich. And so he started working for an accounting firm. And the owner of the firm saw such potential in Robert that he made sure that he got his proper education. And then Robert sometime later on saw that sometimes people didn't crunch their numbers properly and they got themselves in trouble and they needed a lawyer. So he went on and got a law degree besides. So besides his law practice, he and 3 others started their own accounting firm. And that accounting firm grew and prospered and joined with others. And today it's PricewaterhouseCoopers, the 3rd largest accounting firm in the world. Okay, so Robert also wrote and edited some 40 different publications on income tax law and also on accounting. He actually helped to found the accounting department at Columbia University. And besides of all these things that were keeping him busy, he also believed you should have a hobby. And his hobby was collecting plants. And up in Connecticut, he had an area of about 200 acres where he collected gymnosperms, spruces, firs, yews, pine trees, okay, all of those. He had a collection of probably over 700 species up there. And later on, one of his competitors up there that he was competing with, George Brett, who was the owner of Macmillan Publishing, challenged the colonel to come south and this time keep their little competition going, but this time with palm trees and cycads. And so he came south and he became good friends with David Fairchild, who he had already read the book, The World is My Garden, and he became very interested in David. And David helped him to get other contacts that he could write letters to, and they would send him seed to help furnish his palm collection. So it was in 1932 is when he purchased his 65 acres down here, and later on he added onto it, and we're up to 122 acres down here now. But anyway, he started construction of what he called the Coconut Grove Palmedum. And you can see that he wasn't interested in just starting everything from scratch. He actually went around to all of the major nurseries in the area, and he would actually purchase their adult specimens and bring them to the property because he wanted an instant garden. So he built this house for $22,000, but to put everything in perspective, over the next 3 years, he put $85,000 into his collections. This is an aerial view of the 1935 garden. You can see basically the garden. There was the main house there. He had a gatehouse down here where the person that took care of his garden actually worked. They have a shade house here, and they have a small greenhouse right there. So you can see that they were actually farming in this area, in these lowlands at that time. I think that John Popenow, he used to be the director of Fairchild Gardens, told me that they grew broccoli down here, of all things. Okay, there's another view of the property about a year later, 1936. He was beginning construction of some lakes down here. This one has always kind of been there. It was called Duck Lake, and that's where we called it Duck Lake because that's the ducks often would come there, and that was until the crocodile showed up. And he also built several lakes out. There's about 5 lakes out here in all, but they're all named pretty much after the palms that are most common around the lake, and we'll see that in the next picture. So there's another view of the property. About 1994, 1995, when I first came to the property, they actually put in a fire station here. They took a piece of our property and made it into a fire station. Over here you have an area of about 8 acres that are on one of these 99 leases to Fairchild Gardens for their growing facilities. You can see the lakes down here. This is actually Coconut Lake for the coconut trees growing closely to it, and this is actually Royal Lake for the royal palms that are growing most closely. We also have a Nipa Lake, and one that's named after one of his friends called Ford Lake. You may guess who that was, and of course Duck Lake itself. Okay, so let's continue on here. So looking straight down on the property, this was taken probably around 2004, 2005, along in there. You can see we have a number of palms down in this area. And we have this, looks like a golf course out this way. This is called our palm walk. And you can see it ends in this circle out here. So nothing is planted in lines or anything on our property. We have a architect that comes out once a year in February and helps to design our landscape so everything looks really beautiful in the garden setting. You can see that there's a view from the main house down through here because Nell, who grew up here, that was his wife, didn't see how you could possibly live in South Florida and not have a view of the property, a view of the water. Whoops, so when you could do such things, let me go back, whoops, that other one. When you could do such things, he actually dynamited this opening through the Silver Bluff escarpment here so that she would have her view of the water. Here's that 8 acres it's leased to Fairchild Gardens. And here's our fire station over here. So this is a more recent view, and looking back and forth, you can see how the property has grown up a little bit. We haven't had that many hurricanes for a while, and so you can see. I want you to especially focus here on this little island out here. We put 4 Nipa palms on that, and look how they've taken over the island there. So you can see the property also is growing up quite a bit. Okay, also you can see in this area, we are actually starting to plant palms down here. We're removing the Brazilian peppers from this area that used to be broccoli fields. This is actually a map of all of our plantings on the property. The blue dots represent palm trees, and the green ones represent our cycad collection. And then the other colors are conifers or other plants. This map here shows basically where all of our plants come from. So basically we have palms and cycads from literally all over the planet. But you can see most of our concentration is in South America and in the Caribbean. This is one of the earliest. First I want to show you some of the Colonel's plants that are still here on the property. Like I said, he started his garden about 1932. This is the gatehouse here with the original greenhouse. And you can see these palms in here are spindle palms. They're Hyphorbi versifeltii, and this is one of the remaining ones that's still here on the property. This is actually a new planting of versifeltii behind. We also have this very old plant here, which is a Copernicia, which is one of the original plants in 1932. And these two plants behind, which is the Copernicia macroglossa, known as the petticoat palm, because they're supposed to have a petticoat. But this one, apparently because of the numerous hurricanes that suffered, has lost its petticoats. We have Washingtonia robusta, and you can see that it's still standing. It hasn't been struck by lightning yet, like some of the others have on the property. And we have probably the state champion of Brass Ethiopium, which was also planted in 1932. We have a nice female of it. And although this plant has been knocked down and drug out, it's still living and doing well today. It's the Thrinax radiata from St. Kitts and Nevis. And we even have a Hyphini coriaceae, Petersiana from South Africa, and that was planted again about 1932. And you can say, hey, that's really small for that age, but if you look down here, there's a stump of the original plant. So the original plant is all done, and it has had to start all over again. Excuse me. Okay, so this is Tychosperma MacArthuri. This is a plant from India, collected in 1932. We also have Hyphini coriaceae, which is from South Africa. Here is a male plant, and this is a female, of course, with bunches of fruit on it, okay? And this is a very old bottle palm. You can see that it doesn't look quite like the bottle palms we're used to seeing. It's grown up quite a bit and looking kind of lanky here, but you probably would look that way too if you were first planted in 1933. And here's a very old Leucothrinax mauricii from Guantanamo, Cuba, planted in November of 34. And this is what the Thrinax radiata is supposed to look like if it was never knocked down. This is a February 1937. This is a Copernicia alba, planted in 1938. So you can see these things are getting quite old. We've had people donate plants to us, and this was really a wonderful donation. This is a double coconut. And there's a plant we actually have growing here on the property. And believe it or not, this plant was donated to us in 1974. And actually, this really doesn't give you the scale of the size of this leaf. And there's Joanna, who is our collections supervisor. And she's 5'11". So that gives you any scale of the size of this leaf. But this is a plant that's not in a hurry because they claim the double coconut will live to 350 years of age. And there's Joanna besides another rare plant, Attalea crassuspaitha. It's the only Attalea that grows in the Caribbean, only found on that little tiny peninsula that comes off the country of Haiti, okay? And it looks like a coconut. It looks like a very robust coconut. And because you're going to see some other Attaleas that don't look anything like this. And then this is another rare palm. It's basically been extirpated from the wild. There are none of these growing in the wild anymore. And it's a coryphus, so they only flower and bloom once in their life. We were given the seed in 1996. The last surviving one in the wild was growing close to a tiny village, and we saw that it was starting to do strange things, put up these smaller leaves and put up this strange spike-like thing in the air, which was basically its inflorescence. They thought it was demon-possessed, so they cut it down. Here we have the Hemithrynax ekmanii in the foreground here, and in the back we have this real strange thing, Ravinia xerophila from Madagascar. We received seeds of these both in 1996. This one here, we received a seed. It started up as looking like a little blade of grass, and we were just kind of holding our breath, hoping that it would live, because these are a very rare palm from Cuba. It only grows on 3 limestone magotes in Cuba. Maybe there are 1,000 plants growing in that particular particular park or preserve area. This one only grows in an area that is extremely arid. It's one of the most xerophytic palms that I know of. But here's what our Hemithrynax looks today. I just took this picture a few weeks ago, and you can see it's doing quite well here. It's actually is flowering and fruiting for us. So sometimes they call this the lollipop palm, because eventually it will lose its lower leaves and you'll have this little stick sticking up with a ball of leaves. It hardly even looks like a palm. So this thing will look kind of like a lollipop when it's finished. So it was in, you may have kind of wondered how in the world this thing became a botanical garden. So anyway, when the colonel died in around 1954, she had all this land there, and some of her friends were trying to convince her to sell off parts of this land, you know, into housing lots, but she wanted to preserve the garden in memory of her husband. And so what she did, a really smart thing, in 1959, she went up to New York and she started what we call now the Montgomery Foundation, a nonprofit. And so she basically gave away each year a part of the land to the foundation until eventually she owned a little piece of the land just around the house. And so that relieved her from any responsibility of paying real estate taxes on the property. And she was able to preserve this area in South Florida. Also, the other thing she did here was she added on this Florida room onto the house because she had a very bad experience when one of her nieces had a reception there, and it started raining and everyone came into the house there. And she also put this extension onto her dining room here. So it was 1991 when I first came to South Florida. I just finished up my PhD in Chicago, working out of the Field Museum and doing my work in South America. And so I actually was hired on as a fellow at the in a fellowship program at the Fairchild Tropical Botanic Garden. And I was known as the Montgomery Fellow, although one letter that came to address me as the Montgomery Felon. Okay, so I was a Montgomery Felon, okay? And I actually did my first collection for Montgomery and Fairchild Garden in 1992. And of course, where's the first place I did my collection? Was back in Brazil, because this was a country that I was most familiar with. I was first a Peace Corps volunteer down there in 1978 to 1980. And so I learned the Portuguese language, and I was fluent in the language. And I then, after my stint in the Peace Corps, I actually went back a year later and worked for a university where I had helped to found a herbarium. And so I worked there for another 5 years. I also got married to a Brazilian. So we've been married since then. Okay, we're still married. Okay, I started working on my PhD then. In 1986, I went back to Chicago and worked out of the University of Illinois at Chicago with Dr. Sidney Glassman. And so when I got my PhD, then I actually got into the fellowship program there at Fairchild, and came down here and I did my first collection then in 1992. And I also did another collection in 1994, 96, 97. And also you see there's a big gap here, because basically after 1997, I could no longer export plants or seed out of Brazil because they basically closed down all of their legal collecting. Even the Brazilian botanists had difficulty collecting legally in the country at that time, because a lot of people were collecting their stuff and doing scientific and finding products from it, and they weren't returning anything to Brazil. So they got kind of mad and xenophobic about this and closed down all their borders. But some of the things I was able to bring back to the Montgomery property was this Alligoptera arenaria, which you see here has very long leaves and basically has no above ground trunk. And it grows basically along the coastal parts of Brazil. Sometimes occasionally you'll find one with a trunk like you see over on this side, but basically the sand dune has kind of moved and exposed its a trunk. And so here we have one growing at Montgomery. And you can see that it has this strange inflorescence here. This has both male and female flowers. These are the male flowers here up above. And when the male flowers fall off, it exposes the females, which then become receptive, and then they're pollinated and turn into this little infrutescence you see on this side. One that's closely related to this is this also, it's been put in recently into the same genus, Alligoptera caldescens. Caldescens actually means that it has a above ground stem. And you can see how similar this inflorescence is to that one there. Okay, so they probably do belong to the same genus, although originally this one was in the genus Polyandrococcus. I wasn't too happy when they put it in Alligoptera because its anatomy actually is quite different than the Alligopteras are. But if you look at the infrutescences on our plant here, you can see that they have this spicate infrutescence, or that's like a fruit bunch, like our other Alligoptera does. Also, I just love the genus Adelaia. I just think they're just so majestic. And if you look in the forest here, you can see a few Adelaias here. Here's an Adelaia brasiliensis that actually was named for the capital of Brazil, Brasilia. And this is my friend Nicholas von Baer, who works in Brazil. He actually has a nursery there. And this is some of the plants that we've grown from the seed that I was able to bring back from Brazil. This is Adelaia brasiliensis. And another plant I was able to bring back, Adelaia virginuensis. This is a plant that was actually described by my advisor, Dr. Sidney Glassman. And virginuensis means, it actually was named for Oliveira dos Virgínios. This is the area where the type collection was made. And virginuensis, actually virginio in Portuguese means swampy, because what happens, it rains up here in the highlands and they makes their way down and it forms these little wet areas, and this is where the palm is found, anywhere where there's seepage. And so this is where what the palm looks like in the wild, and you can see ours that are growing here in the garden at our property. Another palm that I was able to bring back is Adelaia brettiana. You can see it back here in the background, and look how tall that leaf is. That was about almost close to 9 meters in size. Okay, and there's our brettiana growing in the garden there. And also this funny looking thing here called Adelaia funifera. Here, this is where I like these Adelaias. See how strongly ascending those leaves are, and they're just kind of amazing, the size of these things, because it's actually a botanist's nightmare. He comes up and you see that kind of leaf and you realize you have to make a herbarium specimen. So this thing will actually stick in a herbarium cabinet. So this is actually me, okay? Looking at an Adelaia funifera. Funifera actually means fiber bearing, and you can see this thing actually does bear a lot of fibers, because you can see over here that the Brazilians actually harvest these fibers, and some of these fibers are as long as 3 meters long. So these are exported. The fibers of these used to be made to make the ropes that they used to anchor boats with, because these fibers are very resistant. They don't break down in seawater. You can see even in the old houses that deteriorated and started to rot away, the fibers are still in great shape. and some of the fibers they used to waste because they weren't very stiff, they make these things they call penties, which actually means combs, and they would overlap them and they make roofing out or thatching out of them. And some of the other things that they used to waste, they don't really waste anything. These things are made into brooms and brushes. This is an Adelaia that doesn't have an above ground stem. Okay, it's called Adelaia humilis, which actually means the low Adelaia. And you can see we have some here growing on the property. And the interesting thing about Adelaias that makes them also so special is that they have two different kinds of inflorescences growing on the same plant. They have this male inflorescence you see here with all flowers that have only stamens in them and pollen, and then you have the female inflorescence that produces the female flowers, and you can see that those eventually mature into fruits. This is a Adelaia that my advisor thought was almost extinct until I took him to see this population and other populations like it, Adelaia pindobasu. It grows in the mountains in the interior of Bahia. And so they're extremely tall plant, again, very majestic. And there I am cutting an infrutescence. Okay, now I have to make that infrutescence two-dimensional. I mean, I have to make it in a such so that it'll actually fit on a herbarium sheet. Okay, so sometimes in the field I can't do that, so I have to carry this infrutescence back to my hotel room. And I can remember taking one of these, carrying them up 3 flights of stairs to my room, and I started to cut this thing apart to make it into a two-dimensional shape. And I saw something move inside of it, and I looked a little closer and realized it was a scorpion. So I very carefully picked up this infrutescence and carried it down the 3 flights of stairs out to the parking lot, shook out the scorpion, and proceeded to make it two-dimensional. So here's our pindobasu growing on the property. It's kind of a slow-growing palm. And another Adelaia, maybe you're most familiar with because it has the common name of babasu. And common name in the US is called the American oil palm. And here it is on our property. It's much faster growing than the pindobasu or some of our other Adelaias. You can see it's very prolific. It puts out a lot of infrutescences and a lot of fruit. For that reason, the Brazilians make good use of this American oil palm. They actually extract the seeds from the plant. Sometimes they'll actually take off this outer coating and eat the mesocarp, they call it, or this inner fruit just underneath. And so this, these seeds of this are actually pounded or crushed, and the oil from it is made for lighting and also for cooking, and they make a number of different uses from this oil. Another plant that grows in the extreme parts, southern part of Brazil, and actually on into Argentina and Uruguay and Paraguay, is the genus Butea. And so this Butea aerospatha is only found in 3 states in the southern part of Brazil. And so I was able to collect or bring back seeds of this. This is called Butea aerospatha, sometimes called the woolly Butea, because the spathe, or the peduncular bract, the bract that covers the inflorescence or the bunches of flowers, actually is covered with these little teddy bear-like hairs. And so this is one of the more robust Butea. You can see the size of the trunk of this thing, and we actually have it growing with us for us at the garden there. Sigris is actually one of the plants that I've specialized in, this particular genus. I'm actually a plant taxonomist, a systematist, and I'm actually become a specialist in this particular genus. I'm actually known as being a specialist of the palm flora of the Atlantic coastal rainforest. But this particular palm grows actually very fast, actually up to about 1.5 meters a year. So there you see I'm climbing one in order to get my voucher specimen using the paya that I just showed you. And so this is the Sigris botryophora. Actually, it means grape bearing, because Martius Carlos Martius, who was a German who first collected this thing and named it, thought that the bunches of fruits looked like bunches of grapes. And then here's one that I named. It's called Cygros syriensis. I named it after the state of Ceará in Brazil, because this is where I found and collected it. So this is it growing in the forests of Ceará. And actually you can see it has a tendency to cluster at the base, but it does something even more weird than that. From each seed, it actually grows twins. And so for that reason, I've called this or nicknamed this the twin palm. And I first saw this plant in the garden at Fairchild Gardens. And I looked at the labels, it had two labels on the same plant. On one trunk, it had one label, and on the other one had another label of Cygros, and I knew it was neither one of those. I thought this was some sort of weird garden hybrid possibly, and so I kind of didn't want to do anything with it for a while. And then later on, a friend of mine in Brazil sent me an actual collection from the state of Ceará, and I recognized it as being this plant. So when I went back to Brazil in 1994, I made a special effort to go to the state, and I rediscovered it in the field, and I brought back, and the plants you see are from that collection, the twin palm. Okay, and I named it after the state, although later on I found out it grows in some of the other states as well. This is a plant that grows in a very, very dry area. It's called Cygros coronata. And it grows in some of the driest areas of Bahia. In fact, it grows in an area called Milagres, which means miracles, because that particular part of Bahia sometimes goes without any rain for almost 7 years at a time. And yet this palm will persist under those dry conditions. But you can see that it hardly has any internodes. All of the leaf bases are one on top of the other, and it has a tendency to form its leaf bases in these rows, these vertical or sometimes slightly twisted rows. This palm you see here, I collected the seed and we grew it from seed beginning in about 1992. So it's one of our older plants. Another Cygros I collected in the state of Minas Gerais in Brazil is this Cygros kellyana. I discovered as I started my research on Cygros that I had collected this. I thought it was one thing, and it turned out it was a brand new species. So I named it after Lloyd Kelly, who was at that time the director of, or at least at one time had been the director of the board. Lloyd was is very important in my life because he actually hired me in 1994 to work at Montgomery. And so this just brings up the thing. If you want a palm named after you, you either have to give me a job or give me money for my research, okay? So we named this in honor of Lloyd Kelly and also his family, who has done so much for supporting Montgomery. This very tall palm here is Cygros oleracea, and actually oleracea has something to do with it being a pot herb. And what happens is a lot of the people in the central western part of Brazil actually collect the palm heart of this, and they eat it. And it has kind of a very bitter taste. You have to kind of boil it and throw the water off for a while. And to me, it still has it's an extremely bitter pot herb. You can see I'm climbing it using a Swiss tree gripper. And I bought this thing at the time for about $1,000. I thought I would be using it a lot in the field, but it turns out I use my paya a lot better, because this thing is very, very bulky, and it's kind of hard to carry into the field. It's not something I can throw into my backpack and carry on into the jungle. And there it is growing in the garden there. Here's another one, kind of a dangerous one to collect. You can see groups of the palm growing on this extremely, extremely inclined plane here. And when this thing is wet, you do not want to be trying to collect this palm. It's called Cygros ruchiana. It's actually named for a famous Brazilian scientist who actually was a hummingbird specialist and also an orchid specialist in Brazil. So you can see how dangerous it might be when it is wet to try to make your way up there to try to get over to these palms. Because believe me, if you happen to slip and fall, you might slide into one of these and certainly get the point of why you shouldn't have been doing that. Okay, this is my friend Jilson Essenfelder, who is a big fan of native palms. In fact, I kind of call him the Johnny Palm Seed of Brazil, because he's literally planted many, many native palms in his hometown of Governador Valadares. And he had his own palm collection that he tried growing this in his own yard. And we've had a very difficult time growing this as well, because you can see its habitat. You'd think it would grow anywhere, but actually it does not like our high pH soils. We have limestone soils and actually like more acidic conditions. So this is the only plant we've gotten to survive, the only Russiana. He had one he was trying to grow in his own garden, and it was just doing terrible there. And he decided, after looking at this ugly plant for a while, that that was it. And so he yanked it out of the ground and threw it into his debris pile. And after he did that, the thing took off and was looking wonderful after that. It just needed to be mistreated a bit. Another palm that I named is Cygus vermicularis. Actually, that means worm-like, and you'll see why in a moment. But when I first saw this palm, I was convinced it was Cygus inajai, because I didn't know that palm, because that inajai is one that actually grows in the Amazon, and this actually grows in these pre-Amazonian areas. And now you can see why it's called vermicularis, or worm-like. Okay, I also call this the noodle palm, and I was really, really tempted to call this Cygus raymonoodolensis, okay, because they really look like ramen noodles to me, but I convinced myself I should be more scientific, and so I called it vermicularis, or worm-like, or, you know, you have these vermicelli noodles as well. And there's what ours look like in the garden. It takes about 7 years before it actually starts to put a trunk on, but once it gets its trunk up to the right diameter, it just shoots up like crazy. It grows very, very fast. And you can see our inflorescences in the garden. And here's one with not only fruits on it, but flowers. And you can see how fast this thing grows. This was about a year old. And so this has already grown up. It's already dropped its leaves and also put on a whole another group of flowers. In 1994, I had the opportunity to go to Venezuela, and I really haven't been back since for obvious reasons. But Venezuela, I went and I there was a meeting down there. The International Palm Society had one of their meetings in Venezuela. So after the meeting, I actually made contact with an American expatriate who was working at a university down there, and he loaned me 2 of his students along with his Jeep. And so we drove out to the Llanos area, which is like the Pantanal area of Brazil, or like the Everglades in Florida. And in that area, we were able to collect a Copernicia tectorum. Okay, and you can see it here growing on the Montgomery property, collected from that in 1994. So it's kind of a slow grower. We crossed the Orinoco River, and that kind of divides this Llanos, or swampy area, from the Amazonian type forest on the other side of the river. And this area has these huge granite mastiffs that are come up out of the ground, that hardly anything grows on it, very little soil. But on top of these mastiffs is this palm, the Cygus ornocensis. Of course, it's named after the Orinoco River. And we were able to bring back seeds or fruits of that and get the seeds. And this is our plants that are growing in the garden today, Cygus ornocensis. And then along that north coast, in the mountains along the north coast of Venezuela, I was able to collect seeds of Cygus stenopetala. And you can see this one has a tendency to cluster, although it doesn't look very clustered there. And if you notice down there, it's growing in a much drier area. This is actually a cactus growing down here at the base. And there in full sun, this thing actually does quite well, and actually puts on a heavily clustering palm. When I couldn't go to Brazil anymore, I instead went to Paraguay and on into Argentina and Uruguay. And so there are a lot of beauteous down there. And so I became interested in that genus. And of course, we have lots of, we collected Copernicia alba, which is another Copernacea that grows in the South American continent. There are 3 of them that grow in the continent. We have Tectorum from Venezuela. We have Copernacea prunifera, which means prune or plum bearing, from the northeastern part of Brazil that we also have growing on the property. And we have Copernacea alba that grows in that Chaco area of Paraguay, which is kind of an extension of the Pantanal on into Paraguay and on into Argentina. And this is, of course, Copernacea alba growing on the property. It's probably one of the faster growing of the Copernacea. Very beautiful palm, really. We also brought back Trithrinic schizophila, and you can see its fan leaves here. It's a very spiny palm. It has these leaf fibers that always are quite well armored. And here is the schizophila. You can see why it's called schizophila, means split leaves. And you can see why it's called that. We also collected this Trithrinic brasiliensis, which is extremely, extremely rare in Paraguay. This is the only known population that we knew of in Paraguay. But luckily, I found it with fruits, and I was able to bring back the seed of it, and we have it growing in the garden. But this particular population is no longer in existence. It's now soybean fields in here. But at least we have it preserved at Montgomery. And of course, with all of the beauteas growing in Paraguay, why not name one after Paraguay? Okay, so this is Butea paraguayensis growing at Mbaracaju Preserve, which is, and believe it or not, I was not able to find one single viable fruit or seed from this area, because all of the fruits that I found here, because of this large population, it also had a very large population of palm beetles, okay, or palm weevils. And so every single one I collected did not germinate here. But I did find this in a lesser populated area. I did find some viable fruits, and there are plants that are growing for us at Montgomery. Here you look, where can you see the palm? Well, if you look at this group of people over here on that side, you'll notice that they're all looking down. And so one lady is even on her knees. And so if you look on the ground, can you see it now? Well, actually, you have to get a little closer, and then maybe you can make it out now. You can see a little palm leaf here. And then when you get even closer, you can see the little bunches of, I hesitate to call these coconuts, but they are little palm fruits anyway. But this is a palm tree, okay? Almost gives you a whole different idea what a palm tree is now these days, isn't it? Actually, I call this group, there's a whole group of them in the Butea that I call the grassy Buteas. And there we had some growing at the property. We lost most of these about a year or 2 ago. So we haven't gotten any more seed in since then. But look how dainty, how small this little palm is. Again, I went on from there in Paraguay. Actually, from Paraguay, I actually, in 2004, I did a joint trip from Paraguay on into Argentina. And I was able to collect some more beauties in Argentina. And I ran across this one. No, I did not name it after myself. Being a palm taxonomist, we do not name plants after ourselves. Okay, but on the herbarium sheet that I left there, I mentioned that I thought that this plant may be a new species because it wasn't quite like the Buteas yatae that I thought it might be. Just a variety of. But some Brazilians picked up on that, and they actually described it, and they named it after me. And even after they named it after me, I still wasn't sure that it was a valid species. But some other scientists, Argentinian scientists have gone down there, and they've since looked at it and done additional measurements. So they pretty much confirmed that this is a good species. There's what real true Butea yatae looks like, and we have some of these growing on the property as well. This particular one is from Uruguay, and there you can see kind of compare what Noblick looks like compared to Butea yatae. And if, I don't know, from a distance you can see that there's, the Germans have a word for this, Gestalt. and the one doesn't particularly have the gestalt of the other one. So for that reason, I kind of suspected it may be something different. And also by looking at the flowers, I know that there were some differences there as well. Okay, now we're off to the other side of the planet. We're going to Madagascar, and in 1995, I actually was a joint expedition with Fairchild Gardens, and we had some South African friends with us as well. And I spent a whole month in Madagascar. And even after that, 2 weeks later, I went over to the Mascarene Islands, which is this group of islands over there on that side. And a lot of these islands were actually formed because they are passing over a hot volcanic spot, much like the Hawaiian Islands. But this Madagascar was originally attached to Africa, and so it's maintained its own unique flora. And one of the really palms that you may be familiar with Madagascar is this one, the Bismarckia nobilis. Okay, and it's usually, you're probably familiar with its powdery blue, beautiful leaves. Like the most beautiful form of this actually grows in this kind of semi-arid part of Madagascar called the Isalo area. And going farther north in Madagascar, you get a combination of blue along with the green forms. And when you go completely north in the Madagascar, where they get as much as 10 meters of rain a year, all of those Bismarckias are completely green. So our best, and the ones that people love to plant next to their house, is this powdery blue form, and that's where we collected most of our seed. Here's the ones that are growing in our garden, and here's another group of Bismarckia nobilis that we grew from seed that was collected in 1995. Underneath, we have Hyphene coriacea, also collected from Madagascar. This is another palm-leaved palm that we collected from Madagascar. It actually belongs to the same group as our Bismarckias. These palms, this particular group of palms called the Borassoids, named after this genus, have their palms come in two different sexes. They come in male and female. Of course, this obviously is a female. She's dropping her fruits on the ground that we're picking up, and we were able to bring back seed of this. These fruits here are as big as a coconut, and you open them up, and each fruit has 3 seeds on the inside. So these are some of the Borassus madagascariensis that have been grown from those seeds I was able to bring back from that trip. This is another palm you may be familiar with, Madagascar, called Dipsis dicarii. It grows, actually, it's not that common in Madagascar. It grows in a park there, a preserve that's actually protected between the more rainy rainforest on that eastern side of Madagascar, and just to the west of here you have an extremely dry spiny forest, so it grows in that transitional zone. And so it's called the triangle palm, and you can see its habitat in this semi seasonally rainforest or rainy area. And so we were able to bring back seeds of that, and these are our collections from that. You can see very simply why it's called the triangle palm. We also collected Hyphene coriacea that I just showed you a little bit ago. And this is my South African friend, Bernard Fisher. And there's Bernard again, along with a doctor from South Africa. We actually had a doctor on the trip. And this is our guide from the botanical garden there in Madagascar. This is Hyphene coriacea. Okay, this is a much larger plant of it, and we were able to bring back fruits of this. And this is sometimes called the gingerbread palm, because if you open up one of these, it looks kind of like a gingerbread color in the side. And actually, you can actually eat this thing if you want to, but believe me, it's survival food only. There we have growing in the garden, and we have an ample food supply if we ever run out of food here. But again, I don't think I'd ever want to have to eat this. And there's more of it growing in Hyphene coriacea. These are obviously our female trees. They belong to that same Borassoid group. And this is one I made a trip over to the Mascarene Islands, and the only island over there that was able to bring back seed from was Réunion, which is actually a French territory. now. And this is sometimes called the hurricane palm because it can withstand hurricanes. And you can see why. Look at the base of this thing, how well grounded it is. It probably should be named the cyclone palm because, of course, in the Indian Ocean area, actually those winds rotate in the opposite direction to our hurricanes. And there it is in the garden here at Montgomery Botanical Center. I have collected another group of islands just north of Madagascar, and actually this whole area from there up through here is a sunken mini continent. So some of these islands up here are actually extremely old. They are not volcanic. They're what's left of this mini continent that's left over from this rifting that's been done from Madagascar splitting off, and this sunken continent here, and the India heading up this way, because all of these used to be joined to each other at one time. But what we're interested in is this group of islands right here, okay? Because Praslin Island is the home of the double coconut. Okay, so on Praslin Island, you have this small little forest of these double coconut palms. This is the largest seed actually in the plant kingdom. And you can see it's a whole forest here, and literally lots of female plants out here. There's a male plant here, and you can see that this looks like a giant, well, you know what. And there's the female fruits over here. And of course you take the seed out and that looks like, well, the other part, okay? And the locals have this idea that, well, at nighttime when no one's looking, the male trees will actually lean over and fertilize the females. Although this has never been witnessed for real. Well, no one has actually seen this and survived to tell about it anyway. Oh, look in the background there. You see this these Seychelles are such a wonderful plant. These, like I said, these islands are extremely old. They've been around for a while. They aren't recent volcanic islands. They're part of this surviving continent that used to exist. And so all of the 7 species that are found in the Seychelles, they're all monotypic palms. That is, they only have 1 species in each of the genera. So this one that looks like it has kind of a clamshell like spathe or a peduncular bract here, when it opens up, it actually rains out these really long rachillia or branches, and on the ends of these you can see these little tiny black fruits, and these are completely mature and will grow into another Dickennia nobilis. And there's a closer shot of this Dickennia nobilis. Some of them are quite spiny, and some of them are almost completely without spines. But you can see the small plants of nobilis are very, very spiny. In fact, other than the double coconut, almost all of the palms, of these other palms, the juveniles at least are very spiny, like this Phoenicoforum borsigianum. And you can see the endemic Seychelles pigeon up here feeding on an endemic palm. And again, you can see that these young palms are very spiny. This is our palm, the Phoenicoforum borsigianum, growing in the garden. We also have this Verschaffeltia splendida with its golf ball-sized fruits and its large supporting roots. And there it is growing in our garden, again with supporting roots, again very, very spiny. You have this Nephrosperma van Hoodiana, and you can see it has these much different looking fruits. They actually look like red cherries. And again, the small plant that's growing in our garden. And again, you can see that this is also a very well armored plant. And you might start asking yourself, my goodness, look at all these plants. Why are all of them so spiny? And it's because of this guy. Okay, it's true. At one time, the island had lots of before humans arrived on the land of the island, at least this guy was actually a dominant feeder or herbivore on the island. And he would chomp and eat anything that was not spiny. So if you had spines, you survived from being eaten by this fellow. So while we're talking about islands, let's go over to the other side, to South America, back to South America, and actually to the Caribbean. And we're going to look at Trinidad and Tobago. And I love Trinidad because it has so many special things going for it. I've been there a couple of times now. And the thing that I thought or struck me really strange on this island, this has a couple of geological plates. You've probably heard of plate tectonics, and they're scraping by each other here, the Caribbean plate and the South American plate. And by doing so, those pressures form these weird things that are born on the island, like these mud volcanoes, where the mud actually pours out of the ground, and occasionally they have eruptions. And when the mud erupts out of these mud volcanoes, it actually flows down the slope there, and they look kind of like mud glaciers making their way to the ocean. And actually the island is growing on that side from these mud volcanoes. And the other really unusual thing on the island, there actually is oil found in the area. And you have this lake here of these petrochemical compounds that are seeping up through the ground and form a lake here, kind of a tar pit, okay, a kind of liquid asphalt, so to speak. And sometimes animals will get caught in this, but there are actually a number of organisms that are actually living in this. You can see they have a processing plant over here. They actually make use of this stuff that's coming up through the ground, and they actually have asphalted some of the roads with it. And you can see this is kind of an outpouring from the edge of the lake, that you have this kind of natural asphalt that's forming here. A common palm in the northern part, and actually throughout a lot of the Amazon area, and one of its northern distributions of this Mauritia flexuosa is right here in Trinidad. And so we were able to find fruits of this. I love the fruits of this. They're just so beautiful. Look at that. It belongs to a group of palms that are called calamoid palms. And the calamoids have been found to be one of the most primitive of all in the palm family. Molecularly, we've discovered that they are at the very base of the palm tree, that's whole evolution. And what I find most interesting here is that the fruits have scales on them, just like the dinosaurs, okay? So I just find that so cool that here we have a palm with scales on it like the dinosaurs. This tree over here is actually a male tree, and of course the fruits are formed on the female tree. We collected this in Trinidad, and of course, we made a makeshift pole saw. We've actually drug a piece of bamboo back into the jungle here with us, and we lashed a pole saw to it, and we were able to get down the leaf we needed for a voucher specimen. And the reason I didn't want to climb this palm, because I'd had a very bad experience with this in Brazil. I climbed one of these things and I got all the way up to these dead leaf bases you see here, and I tried to move it to get out of the way, and there was a wasp nest on it, and they chased me. Of course, they stung me several times as I was trying to make my way slowly back down the tree, because you can't move very fast with this pea. And when they stung me, it kind of startled me, and my face jerked to one side, and you can see I wear glasses. And so when my face jerked to one side, my glasses flew off, and I'm very nearsighted, and these glasses fell to the bottom of the tree. And there was a water surrounding the tree, and there's only this little island where the base of the tree was coming out of. And so I was very glad that when I got to the base of the tree, that my glasses just happened to land on that island and not in the water itself. So I was able to recover my glasses. And here we have Mauritia flexuosa growing in the garden. I hope that we can get it up to an adult size here. That would be really marvelous because they really are a fabulous plant. While we're still in this area, here we see Trinidad down here, but we have this whole group of volcanic islands swinging around here. And then, of course, we have Puerto Rico and the Dominican Republic and Haiti. Remember, I showed you that strange Atalaya that only grows out here, the Crassus-spesa, which is only found in Haiti. But here we have another palm in the Cygrus genus that's only found on 5 islands in this area of the Antilles here. And so they grow from St. Lucia, Martinique, Dominica, Guadeloupe, and Montserrat. So these 5 islands are where you find this one species of Cygrus, and how it got there, we have no idea because there's no other Cygrus found that direction. There's no other ones found here all the way down to Trinidad. Even Trinidad and Tobago don't have any Cygrus. And the only place where we get our next species is in this mountainous area along that north coast, where Cygrus, where Stenopedala grows, and you saw that we had growing in the garden. So this is Cygrus amara, okay, and it's actually quite a sizable plant. It's very beautiful Cygrus. Its fruits here are bright yellow when they're mature, and they're about the size of a hen's egg. Again, a very majestic palm growing on these 5 islands. And opening one of these fruits up, you see that it has this hollow place on the inside. I'm of the opinion that when South America and Africa and all of those things were quite more squeezed together, and actually there was this large waterway down through the central part of South America, a lot of these Cygrus or Ataleoid palms were actually, some of them actually were adapted and began to float out and away from South America. And this is the only way we can explain how the coconut came to be born. And so I think that this Cygrus amara is actually a resident or a relic population left over from that outflow of seeds that were coming off of South America, because there's no other way that we can explain why the coconut is over there in Southeast Asia, and it's the only caucasoid palm over there. And if we run the molecules analysis on it, its next closest relative is actually over here in South America. So it's really an interesting story to tell and to behold. So here's Cygrus amara growing in the garden here. And so this is from actually Dominica, and actually I've collected more seeds from Dominica since one, but this particular one was collected by Scott Zona, for those who know him as a palm scientist he used to work at Fairchild. Okay, we also did collections from Dominica. Actually, I've collected from all of the islands except for Guadeloupe. We had collections from Guadeloupe already done by another palm scientist. So in Dominica, we were actually able to collect this fan leaf palm, the Cocothrynax barbadensis, and also some ripe fruits and seeds of this Iphanes minima, which you see germinating over here. And this is actually a much larger Iphanes minima after it's grown up a bit. And you can see, again, it's an extremely spiny palm. In 1998, I had the opportunity to go to Indonesia, and actually I collected only on one island there, the island of Java. But Java is kind of interesting because they speak 3 different languages on their island. They have Bahasa Indonesia that everyone is supposed to speak, but actually the island that used to be had 3 different languages at one time. But they have the one language that unites everyone. I was able to get collections from Indonesia and bring them back in 1998. And one of the more interesting ones I brought back was a Snipa fruticans, which is sometimes called the mangrove palm because it grows in these mangrove estuaries close to the coast. And you can see it's a very large palm. These leaves are incredibly large and can give you a real headache in terms of trying to make a pressed specimen from it. But if you think that's difficult, look at the infructescence here in the foreground here. There's the flowers of this thing. Such an odd palm. Actually, molecularly, the Nipa genus, it's the only one found in this particular subtribe or whatever, but it's only found, there's only one species in the whole group, and it's found to be the second oldest group of palms in the entire family. But early on, they didn't even recognize this as being a palm because it's so weird. Look at these are the male flowers. They look like these catkins. Since I come from Ohio originally, they kind of remind me of pussy willow flowers. And then you have this strange thing here. Those are the male flowers that are kind of grouped together there in the head. And so this male pot flowers will ripen up into a huge infructescence. And out of this one huge infructescence, we were able to harvest about 120 seed. So some of them I left in Indonesia, and I brought back maybe about 60 of them for our collection. But not very many of them survived. You can see that these are huge infructescences, that they've gotten so heavy and fallen over into the water, and then they begin to break apart and float off like the coconuts do to a new resting place. And look at the size difference between this fruit from the eastern collections or populations from Indonesia and those from the western ones. And there's a group. We planted, actually planted only 4 plants out on this island, and they've literally taken over the island because unlike a lot of other palms, Nipa has a horizontal stem. So it's kind of above ground, but it grows horizontally. So these are only 4 plants growing out there. And why not, when do you not go to Indonesia and not bring back the betel nut, okay? There it is growing in the forest there in one of the national parks. And here we have the part of our voucher specimen, the betel nut. And here are our 3 plants here. And of course, the betel nut is used by some of the locals as a stimulant drug. And those that do use it, I would not recommend it because it's been associated with some mouth cancers and other assorted things. And it certainly doesn't leave your teeth a very pretty color either. Okay, another plant we collected there was Aringa obtusifolia. And here we have in the forest situation, it only produces a single trunk. But when you plant it out in full sun like we did here, it has a tendency to grow multiple trunks. This is another species of Aringa growing in Indonesia. It's called Aringa pinnata after its pinnate leaves, also nicknamed the sugar palm because actually they will collect the sap out of this and actually make sugar out of it. But you can see that these are monocarpic palms. They only flower and fruit once in their life, but these flower and fruit in kind of a strange manner because once they start flowering, which they start at the top to flower, they keep flowering and fruiting until they reach the base, and then that's the last hurrah. And they've used up all of the starch in the original trunk, and then they die. And you can see this is our Aringa pinnata that's growing at Montgomery, and it was indeed from this 1998 collection. And this inflorescence you see at the base of our Aringa pinnata is its last hurrah. So it's only 22 years old, but it's about to go to palm heaven. Here's another monocarpic palm from Indonesia. This is Corypha utan, and you can see this is one that actually after it flowered, it fruited, and it has passed on to palm heaven as well. And here's one that we found with ripe fruits on it. It's got kind of bent over, maybe in a thunderstorm or something, but still the fruits were dropping off of it. And we were bringing back these fruits, and so we have Corifa utan growing in our garden as well. Speaking of islands and staying kind of in the same area, Indonesia is on up this way, and here's Papua New Guinea, here's Australia, and here is an island called New Caledonia. And actually it used to be a part of Australia, but because of plate tectonics, it kind of broke apart from Australia many millions of years ago, and it's been rafting away from Australia ever since, and actually is on into a more tropical and more humid zone where it has its own unique flora. And probably some of these plants that are growing in New Caledonia used to exist in Australia at one time. So New Caledonia, it's really kind of a unique plant palm island in that respect. So originally part of Australia. What happened to Australia was it became very, very dry during the Pleistocene, and undergoing this epoch of extreme dry spell, most of the tropical or humid plants in that area were kind of completely went extinct. So it's kind of a unique experience to visit New Caledonia and see these really rare forms of things that may have even existed in Australia at one time. But one of the palms you may be familiar from this island of New Caledonia is this one, the Chamberonia macrocarpa. And there it is growing in the garden, these smaller ones. And this palm has a very fabulous spike leaf or new leaf when it comes out, and it always comes out this kind of reddish or magenta color when that first leaf opens up, and then later on becomes green. But that's what makes this kind of a spectacular and remarkable palm. And there we have it, they're much bigger here, and this is a more recent photo of that same group. You can see that they're growing up. Now you may wonder, here, you know, I began to wonder, I'm making these trips all over the world and bringing back other plants from all over the planet to preserve in our garden, but we really aren't preserving any of our native species here in the United States. And so I decided to get more serious about collecting some of our own native plants. And so here in Florida, of course, our first trip was in 1995 to the Gisborne, Florida Everglades, where we're walking around in about hip deep water. There's the biologist from the Wakahanchi Strand Preserve State Park, and myself, of course, and this is Vicki Murphy, our nursery supervisor. And of course, what do you collect from the Everglades other than the Everglades palm here? There it is with its fan-like leaves. And we were able to bring back seed of that and grow them up. And there we are, the Coeluraphe wrightii, otherwise known as the Everglades, or used to be called the Parotis palm because that's the genus that it used to be in. And that back behind, of course, you can see the Corifa utan that we brought back from Indonesia. Another palm that we collected from Florida is sometimes known as the Florida Royal. But Scott Zona, when he did the revision for Rhistonia, said that these were the same species as the one found in Cuba. So he renamed this Rhistonia regia, or actually put it back in that group. Its original name was Rhistonia elata. And so we collected some fruits off of this one at the Collier Seminole State Park. And we also made collections of it in the Wakahanchi Strand Preserve State Park. And you can see that here I am up the royal palm. And I didn't try to climb the entire thing. I actually used a pole saw to get off the parts that we needed. I also got a very bad case of poison ivy at the base, from the base, because they have poison ivy vines all over it. But here are those plants growing at Montgomery. We replaced the entire colonnade at Montgomery with wild collected Florida Royals. And you can see they're even getting bigger even today. The nice thing about Florida Royals is that they can take a beating from hurricanes like you see this and come back looking like that. So it doesn't really matter that if you look like this after the hurricane, as long as you survive the hurricane and look like that afterwards. But I collected seeds of these things in 1991, and look at that. These guys are they're still teenagers, okay? They're still teenagers, so if that gives you any idea how fast royals can grow. We also collected from the Keys, Leucothrinax mauritii, and those were collected from the Key Deer Refuge there in Big Pine Key. And you can see them growing in the garden there. You can see why it's called Leucothrinax. Actually means the white thrinax. And it used to be actually just called Thrinax mauritii, but after some molecular work, they discovered that actually it belonged in its own genus. And I've also collected in these states, okay, Texas, Nevada, Arizona, California, Alabama, Oklahoma, and Arizona again, and Florida, okay? So what do you collect in Texas? But Sable mexicana, of course, okay? And that's the only really native stand of Sable mexicana is down near Brownsville along the Rio Grande River. And believe it or not, in order to get to this sanctuary, you have to go through the fence, okay, that protects our boundary from the Mexico. So anyway, the sanctuary is on this side, and it's actually owned and maintained by the Audubon Society. And so there it is, this natural patch of Sable mexicana growing in this sanctuary. We were able to bring back seed of it, and there it is growing in our garden, Sable mexicana from Texas. And we also collected, this is my daughter and I, that we collected from this population of Washingtonia foliifera in Southern California. And actually this particular population is growing along the San Andreas fault line. And so water seeps up through the San Andreas fault line and actually has made this nice little oasis here in the middle of the desert. And that's why you have the Washingtonia growing there. And here you can see a Washingtonia with these large, looks like almost like bunches of grapes growing out on the Washingtonia. Just one of these have hundreds and hundreds of fruits in them. But one of the really marvelous or interesting populations that I visited was at the Cofa National Wildlife Refuge in Arizona. This thing is found in the middle of the Sonora Desert. It's like a little relic population of the desert fan palm. You can see it, it's growing in this extremely narrow valley. Here it is up here in this narrow little valley, and this is a little kind of a close-up of that. And so in order to get to this population, you have to actually walk up through this slope here and up through a tiny, very narrow kind of old fat man squeeze to get up to it. And when you finally make it up there you find the Washingtonia growing in the middle of the Sonora Desert. And the only reason that it is here is because the waters, when it does rain, actually flow off the top of this plateau and funnel down through this narrow little valley. And this narrow little valley only gets sunshine or direct sunlight for about only a couple of hours during the day. So this palm has actually survived in this area for a long time. And it looks like due to a fire or maybe a lightning struck sometime in the past, all of the thatch has been burned off of this particular group of palms. But there's my daughter. You can see the size of these palms growing in this little relic population. The reason we were wearing orange vests because we happened to arrive there at the time of year that it was hunting season in the refuge, and we didn't want to be mistaken for a bighorn sheep or something like that. But here's the true form of the Washingtonia foliifera, and this is also growing in Arizona, actually north of Phoenix, Arizona. Again, this area is completely surrounded by desert and these large organ pipe type cacti. But here in this little wash, we have a small population of Washingtonia between Phoenix, Arizona, and just south of Prescott. And yes, there are palms in Oklahoma. This is a group of palms, the Sable minor, growing in the state of Oklahoma, in that southeast corner of Oklahoma. And yes, we are standing in a population of Sable minor. And there's another population growing in the northern part of Alabama. And when I looked into it, this is actually growing at the same latitude as the population that is growing in Oklahoma. just a few feet difference in latitude. My most recent trips were to Mexico. It's the first time I really did any collecting in Mexico, but usually when they sent a botanist from the Montgomery Botanical Center to Mexico, these are people that were more interested in collecting cycads, and so they never sent a palm guy there. But there I went to Mexico in 2019, and we were specifically collecting palms in the genus Bahia for this person, these two people that are working on the genus. And so we collected several species of Bahia from Mexico and whatever else we could find too as well. And my last trip in 2019 was to the continent of Africa. I'd never done a collection in the continent of Africa. So this was my first and only trip actually as of this date to Africa. And we made a collection in Senegal. Okay, and we did most of our collecting, of course, in this more humid area on the southern part of it, because actually up this way, it's part or an extension of the Sahara Desert. And of course, what do you collect in South Africa? You collect things like the African oil palm and this thing, which is another borassoid palm, the Borassus ethiopium. We saw that we had one of these growing in our garden, but we really didn't have any wild collected ones. So this is some scientists that invited us to go with them on this trip. They are from the Geneva Botanical Garden. And so this was a great trip this is Patrick, our executive director. And so this was a great opportunity for us to do our first trip into South Africa. And actually this year was supposed to be another trip to Angola or Nepal, actually, another trip to South Africa, but unfortunately it didn't come off. Okay, so again, let me kind of summarize. Again, most of our expeditions, our palm expeditions, we've gone around the planet. We've mainly focused on South America. A lot of collections from Brazil and, of course, Paraguay and Argentina, and a lot of collections from the Caribbean and Central America. Fewer collections from Southeastern Asia, but we also have done collecting with contact collectors and stuff over here in Australia. And of course, my trip to Indonesia, Java, and one of our former directors did a major collection in Sumatra. So yeah, we've had collections from all over the planet. And this has all helped to build up our garden. Again, remember our mission is to advancing conservation, research, education, through living plant collections. That's what we're all about. Remember, we're not a population-based, we are a population-based collection. We're not interested in just having a single specimen of a species. We're interested in actually having population samples. And for that reason, we oftentimes collect fruit from at least 5 different mother plants when we do a collection in another foreign country. And we don't plan out anything unless in the palm walk, for example, unless we can plan out at least 7 to 15 of each of them. And they are in a garden of exemplary design, because once a year in February, we bring down our landscape architect, and he will actually we tell him what we have available for planting, and he tries to design these plants into the garden where he thinks that they would look beautifully and have a very nice landscape design. And then we tell him whether they actually grow there or not. So it's a kind of a back and forth sort of discussion between us and the landscape designer. So that is what Montgomery Botanical Center is all about. And so I'd like to thank you for allowing me the opportunity to share with you today. And any questions, I certainly would be happy to hear more from you people. Okay. And so let me share one other thing with you. I think, but if I take off this share, will it bring us back to the normal screen?
Yeah, if you end share.
Okay, stop share. Okay, and that'll bring me back to my screen, right?
Okay, so now you need to press share screen, and think there should be an option.
Oh, to that one?
It's just screen. It'll just say
Okay,
screen, basically.
okay. Okay, let me get out of this one. Let me see. Escape. Let's see. I guess I didn't quite get out of that. Okay. So stop that share and do this one. No, I don't want to end the meeting, do I? I want to get out of this one. Okay,
I
this
guess
is this.
just try and get out of.
Yeah, here.
Okay.
Okay. And that should bring us back to this one, right? My main screen is here, is it? Oops.
Yeah, just go to just press screen. I think is the main one. Unless like there's another PowerPoint or something else that you want to bring up. Sometimes you can.
I wanted to bring it back to my where they can see me.
Oh, they can see you right now.
Oh, they can. Okay. If they can see me, that's fine. Okay. So what I wanted to share with you is this guy, the largest seed. Okay. The world's largest seed. You can see how much bigger it is in my head. Okay, the world's largest seed. And actually, palm trees holds several different world records. Not only do they hold the record for the largest seed, but also they hold the record for the tallest unbranched stem, which is the Syroxylons in South America, where they are found to grow up to 200 feet with unbranched stem. And they also find that the largest or thickest stem from a primary growth. And that one is also from Jubea chilensis. And indeed, another one record that they hold is the longest living plant tissues. You may think, oh no, how about the sequoia, the giant sequoias? They live what, 70 years? I mean, thousands of years, don't they? But in truth, the only living functioning tissues in that sequoia are only the outermost layers, which are about 70 years old. But a palm tree has to maintain all of its tissues functioning, or else that crown will die. And some of the oldest palms they found is one called Livistona estonia from Australia, which is found to grow about 720 years old. I've already talked about the double coconut they believe will live up to 350 years. And then also another record they hold is the most chromosomes in the monocot family. And that's the forest coconut that grows over in Madagascar. And it has a number over 600 chromosomes in its plant cells, which is absurd because most palms only have between 24 and 32 chromosomes. So this is really, we don't know why that occurred that way. Okay, so that's all I have to share. Can they actually see me?
Yeah, they can see you. Like
Okay.
they're here. So yeah, if anybody wants to unmute themselves or come up on video, we're in Q&A time here.
How come I can't see myself, or I can't
There's
see
a
the other
speaker
people?
view, and then there's a couple
Oh,
different view options, like up in the upper right hand corner, kind of.
okay. Maybe I'm not looking at the right place. Hold on. Maybe if I put this down, I can click on the right thing. Oh, there I am. Okay, there I am. Okay.
Should be speaker view and gallery view. So
Okay.
so
As of you people who are watching this, I don't have too much experience with Zoom. Okay, so speaker view. Okay, so I can see myself anyway, and I can see you, or actually a picture of you.
so yeah, let me pull up me here. So I guess I'll just kick it off here with one question.
Okay,
So
sure.
you covered a lot of plant material, and I saw a couple of them that might have made their way from being a little bit like out there and niche almost to kind of common, like the Bismarckia.
Yeah,
and the triangle palm.
sure.
I know those are used like somewhat commonly in landscapes. Are there any others that have are starting to be grown commercially, or from this presentation, or any of them that are grown in Montgomery in general that like have started to see like use for homeowners and stuff like that?
Well, a lot of them we haven't had in cultivation, almost none of, like most of the Seychelles palms, we really didn't have any seed of them, or were we actually growing them here. And so it's nice that we have them here, because once they get up to producing fruits and seeds for us, we will be able to distribute those. But that Cygris vermicularis, it's been distributed to a lot of the local nurseries. A lot of our Adelaeas have been distributed to local nurseries, and they are actually growing them and selling them. Whenever we have extra plants or seed, we oftentimes distribute them to the local palm societies, like Palm and Cycad Society, or actually the Palm Society of South Florida, or the Palm and Cycad Society of West Palm Beach. And I think there's even a Central Florida Palm Society that we donate seed to on occasion. So we try to get them out to botanical gardens first, especially if they're of scientific value, especially if they're extra seeds we've collected from the wild. And also, those are the first place we try to distribute to. And then secondly, to the palm societies, where we have a lot of palm enthusiasts. Okay, and a lot of times they will bid on these things and help to bring in money to their societies. And then lastly, we will actually give these things to what we call the botanicalauctions.com, where these things are actually bid upon, and this helps to support the person who is actually collecting these fruits from the ground, so they don't go to waste here, and then that helps to support our program there. Okay, because we are a nonprofit, and so everything that's we don't sell palms here. We don't never sell them, except we do distribute them through this palmauctions.com area, and anyone can get on that and bid on the seeds, and get seeds from Montgomery, really, if they're available. Okay.
Cool. Okay.
Not too many of those. I don't know too many of them that will grow for you guys up in Orlando, because you have that problem with the winter time.
We're kind of straddling like some very
The one thing I love about the palm enthusiasts of Central Florida is that you really appreciate your palms that you do grow. Sometimes even more so than the Palm Society here in South Florida.
Yeah, they're a little spoiled, huh?
They are. They are spoiled.
Hi,
Yeah.
Janice here. A comment and then a question.
Sure.
Comment, many of those palms I do recognize at being at Lou Gardens.
Okay.
Many of them, the Canuba, the triangle, a lot of them are there.
Yeah.
And then there's a good selection of them up at the UF facility.
Yeah. We have distributed a number of our collections to Lou Garden, so many of those there are actually from Montgomery.
Right. The other is more a question. Realizing more to do with conservation, but do you all get involved in any hybridization at all?
We try not to get into the hybridization things, but whenever we distribute fruits from our collection, we always warn the people that they are open pollinated, because they may be getting some hybrids. Because we can't control our bees and animals here on the property. I mean, how far can you have these things separate from one another, and a bee can't fly?
True. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, I'm pulling some stuff up here from the chat. I think this is from Pat Shastri. She says, does Borassus flaviolefera grow in Florida? And is this the one that also produces the ice apple fruit?
I'm not familiar with that name of the fruit, but which one was it? Were you asking?
Borassus flaviolefera?
Oh, flaviolefera. Yes, it is found here in South Florida too. Actually, that species comes from India, okay, and that part of the world. I haven't been to India yet either, but we do have a few flavoliferas growing here from the Colonel's original collections.
Cool. Okay, I've got one here from Joe. What are the most common problems for palm trees in Central Florida?
I think primarily you have much better soils than we do down here, certainly. And so there's a lot of things that you possibly could grow, but I mean, a lot of them are maybe worth trying because you never know when in Central Florida, you maybe have a little microclimate zone that you're in there that you may be able to grow some of this stuff. I know some people there in Central Florida that, do grow some stuff that technically they shouldn't be growing. But certainly most of the beauteous species will grow for you. Some of the sigers will grow for you. Possibly even some of the atalaeas will grow for you guys up there. And so some of the fan leaf palms, fan leaves seem to be able to have a pretty good resistance to being frozen and stuff. Bismarckia maybe not so much, but certainly some of the Copernicias and stuff will grow there, and certainly the Trithrinax and some of the ones from like the Himalayan fan palm, the ones that you find growing in Europe, will probably grow for you too as well. So you just have to look to see where do these things are they found native to, and see if maybe they would grow at your latitude. But there's no reason why you can't enjoy a nice palm collection in Central Florida.
Cool. Okay. Well, if unless there's anything else here, if it comes up real quick, we'll just go to the all members meeting. But I'll try and be quick with that as well. But just wanted to say thank you again to Dr. Noblick. It really meant
Sure.
a lot. Just, I mean, I feel like we got a huge geography lesson here as well today. So.
Sure. Well, it's been an honor to be able to share with your society. I mean, with your group, yeah.
Well, thank you very much. Or did you have something to say, Janice? Or
I just said obrigado.
oh,
yeah, obrigado. Yeah, that's Portuguese for thank you. Yeah.
Muito obrigado. Yeah,
I say obrigado because I'm a male.
That's right.
Okay.
Yeah, my wife's Brazilian as well. So.
Oh, she is. Okay, that's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah, I've been married to my wife for since 1981. So we've been together.
Portuguese women are great.
Aren't they though? Yes.
Yeah, Janice is from, her family's from Portugal. So.
Okay, yeah. Well, my wife is a kind of what I call Heinz 57, all these different ingredients put together, because Pernambuco, where she was born, it was the Dutch that settled that area, and then the Portuguese came and chased them out, and of course you had the indigenous area people there, and they had the African slaves that were brought over, and she's a little bit of all of this. So she's got Dutch blood in her, and she's got Portuguese blood in her, and she's got a little bit of African blood, and she's got a little bit of everything. And actually her last name is Vanderlei, which is very Dutch. Okay.
Wow. Okay. Well,
okay.
Yeah, we'll have to, I definitely want to catch up some more after here, and we'll talk more about Brazil. I didn't realize that so much of your work was focused there, and
yeah.
So, but all right, sir. Well, thank you very much again.
Sure.
And hope you stay safe. And
yeah, all of you too as well. Yeah, take care. Okay, we'll see. So I just press the leave button here, or what?
Yeah, there should be an end button, like at the bottom right-hand side.
Okay, I see that. Okay, well, stay safe, everyone. See you. Bye-bye.
Obrigado.
Okay, so I guess I just wanted to go into our meeting here. This has been pretty long for most of these, but it's not very often you have one of the world's foremost palm experts to be able to come on and present. So I just wanted to cover a few items real quick. Continuing education. There's there's been a lot of opportunities this year for it. I still think that folks, the 10 hours, unless you don't have access to internet somehow, which everyone here ought to, like that I'm talking to right now, I'd like to keep in like the requirement for 10 hours this year. There's been tons of availability for that. But regarding volunteer hours, there are still no requirements for this year. So I've been having some people getting a little concerned here that we're coming into the closing months of the year, but it's been such a weird year. There are no requirements for volunteer hours. So maybe some point in 2021 we'll go back to there being requirements, but I will let everyone know across the board, email here, etc. Like when we start expecting people to gain volunteer hours again. But as of now, if you are able to get them, they will go towards 2021 or whenever we do. I mean, assuming we'll come back in 2021 at that point. So let's see here. I guess the other thing that has been coming up is garden festival stuff. I guess the biggest thing I'm going to hit on here, and I'll probably go to Lee for any of the other details, but I just wanted to cover one big aspect of it is the tents. I think that there's normally 9 tents that we have, and we're down 2 tents currently. We were able to cannibalize a couple, and then turn one of the tents into a Franken tent, and it's functional. It was broken. We had 3 broken total, but we got one of them back. I think that we can still repair some of the tents that are broken here. I talked to Ed, and Ed seems to think, he's taken a look at it, and he says that the parts are orderable, and that if somebody wanted to take it upon themselves, I think that wanted to come pick them up and try and take a shot at repairing it, I think it would save us a good bit of money in terms of ordering new tents. I understand there are problems there. I've got to go on and try and order the pieces and stuff like that for you. But if you want to work with me on that, I think it would probably be worth our time. Outside of that, we're going to work on talking to Lowe's and Home Depots and stuff like that, and see if we can get donations, and either monetary or for equipment. So, i.e., equipment, the tents. And another avenue is that I kind of thought that we didn't get too much return on this. I had one person willing to contribute, but if some people want to try and contact me and see about contributing for new tents, like I think that if we get 3 or 4 people contributing $30 to $50, we should be able to get a new tent pretty easily. Good tents cost about $200, so 150 to 200. We definitely want to try and be over 150 so that we get tents that aren't just going to break again. And yeah, we would like to try and expand the number of tents that we have as well, because borrowing isn't ideal in some respects, because we'll have to pay people if we break their tents. So it'd be better if we had a lineup of our own to delve into here. But at any rate, I don't know if Lee's here and she's got anything else to contribute here. And she might have. We went over when people had to go, but
I'm here.
okay, yeah.
I just want to add, Lucas has offered to be a sponsor this year, so we do have I have some paperwork to get to them, and we're also working on OUC for a sponsor. We are moving ahead this year, for next year rather. We're probably going to go from 9 o'clock till 3 instead of 4. And also the leadership team will be giving their information to Jim to get it on VMS. So be on the lookout for that, and people will be able to sign up if you're not already signed up with your leader. If you already are signed up with your leader, they'll be giving that information to Jim. So it will be on the VMS. And marketing should be starting to take place in about a month or so. They're working on getting their plan together, and of course with our sponsors we have to get their logos and things like that in place. So things are moving along quite well, and I need to thank a lot of people for that. There's a lot of work going into it, so thank you all very much.
Well, thank you, Lee. Hopefully it'll all work out, and we'll have some kind of thing going on here in March. But okay, I guess moving on to the final things I've got here are shifts for January 2020. As I mentioned in emails, and I think I might have mentioned the last time we came on, like folks, like we're opening it up. Age is no longer a requirement. People can come back and contribute for the slots that are available. Unfortunately, there's just not a lot of slots that are available right now because it's just what we can control on our own perimeter here. And so I think that besides the plant clinic and the gardens, there's just not a whole lot. But we'll be doubling basically the plant clinic here going into January because we will have the PM, the afternoon shifts coming back into play. So we're at least anticipating it anyway. So just keep in mind, a lot can happen between now and January, but we would like to be back in a place where we can open up the plant clinic to its normal hours. So if you all want to try and start getting signed up for that, I talked to Shalise about it, and just let her know. We'll do it on a first come first serve basis, and you can do 2-hour shifts or 4-hour shifts, and we'll try and keep it rotating every other week, whatever you end up deciding. So just try and reach out to me and Shalise. Make sure to contact both of us on the email so that we can both see what's going on there, because it could be a little confusing if we're trying to go on first come first serve. So outside of that, I think that's it. So thanks for sticking around for this supersized version of Lunch and Learn. I mean, I hope you all, it was a little intense there with the Latin a lot of the time. I mean, I'm somebody that's taken classes in botany, and for me, it was still pretty tough to struggle I was struggling there in a few points in terms of trying to make sense of what we were looking at. But I mean, there were definitely some of those that translated over to like at least like in the same genus and family of some of the things that we have here, like the butias, the pindo palm, and things like that. So anyway,
John?
Hope you guys liked it.
John?
Yes, you got Janie.
Yes, can you maybe just give a quick summary of what's happening with the class?
Okay, so yeah, just I guess it was last week, we had our kind of orientation for people that like are interested in joining the program, and we are in the process of taking their applications right now until the beginning of October 2nd. From there, we're going to go through the interview process via Zoom, and we'll reach out to, the people that like are the references and cover all of what we do with the application process, and hopefully we'll be done with that by November. And that should give us some time to get everything, finalize the class and get things set up moving on November, December into January. And January we'll be teaching the class online, like as I mentioned, like we're having Bill Lester from Hernando County kind of guide us through this, because that's how he teaches, is online. Any of you are welcome to join for online if you want refreshers or anything like that, and continuing education. And it'll be broken up week by week by section, but it'll be all through the online learning platform Canvas. And we'll be teaming up with Lake County, Sumter County, Osceola County. So we just added Lake County yesterday. We told them that we were going ahead with a training, and their agent said, okay, we can jump on board, and it's better to do it this way for online, where we can split up our teaching duties, so to speak, here. And we'll probably still have a time that we meet up on Zoom and all that, like once per week. But I'll probably leave that to the class, like in voting, like what works best for their schedule. But we'll see. So yeah, that's where we're at in terms of getting the class all lined up for this year. Is there anything I'm missing here, Janie?
I don't think so. It's the one thing that's a strength of this model for everybody is that the timing, it doesn't have to mean you have a full day every week to give. So we're hoping this will give us, you know, folks who maybe can not have to be those who aren't working. So we're looking forward to that. And there's a question about schedule of the classes. The classes, I don't think the syllabus or anything is ready at this point, but it's going to start in January. John will be in charge of, you know, when that starts. He'll tell us, but I think it's scheduled for like early January.
Yeah, it's either January. We haven't finalized yet. I think January 11th was the tentative date that we had, but and then they'll go on through March. So should be good. Should be a lot of familiar folks that you saw when you went through training. That, you know, in terms of our speakers, but like the format's going to be a little different. Be broken more up into like 20-minute segments is what we're trying to encourage people to do. But I think it'll be pretty fun. It'll be an interest, and it's like kind of a new frontier here for us. So we might even keep parts of this, aspects of this going, like once we go back to normal here. You'll turn to this resource now that we've done it this way. So yeah, I'll make sure to send out a schedule of the classes. So for today, let's go for an hour and a half of continuing education and 15 minutes of volunteer hours. Well, 0.25 hours. So, okay, with that, thank you all again, and look forward to seeing you all in a couple weeks here. I think Dina is going to be our speaker at that point, and stay tuned, like on email, for more about what we've got to offer down the road here. Everybody take care. Stay safe.
Bye.
Bye.